Welcome to the deep dive. So, have you ever looked at your product roadmap and felt like it's less of a strategy and more, I don't know, just this endless grocery list?
Oh, absolutely. A jumble of urgent requests, bugs, features, all shouting for attention. It's a super common feeling.
Exactly. And you end up just reacting, right? Maybe to the loudest voice in the room, or everything gets thrown into one big chaotic queue, and that whole strategic thinking thing, poof, gone.
Vanishes.
Well, today we're doing a deep dive into a really interesting shift in thinking about this whole prioritization mess. It's inspired by a great article called The Prioritization Portfolio: Don't Stack Rank, Allocate.
Right. That piece by Sam Robertstad on the Product Leader's Playbook, it's got some really solid ideas.
It really does. So, our mission today is basically to unpack why that traditional stack ranking approach can be, well, a trap, and then explore how this idea of portfolio thinking can turn that chaos into something more like a coherent investment strategy.
Moving beyond just juggling tickets to actually managing like investment portfolios for your product.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of reminds me of that Michael Porter quote you mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah. Strategy is about making choices, trade-offs. It's about deliberately choosing to be different.
It fits perfectly, doesn't it? Because this is all about making deliberate allocation choices.
It really sets the stage.
Oh,
Okay, so let's dig into this stack ranking trap. It feels so logical on the surface, right? Get everything in a backlog, rank it top to bottom.
seems systematic, sure, but the article nails why it's actually pretty problematic. The big thing is it treats all work as if it's the same,
Right. It assumes you can somehow compare, I don't know, a growth experiment against a critical security patch using the exact same criteria.
which is kind of nuts when you think about it. And it leads to these predictable issues, like the growth features. They almost always bubble to the top.
Because they promise that immediate measurable impact, right?
Yeah.
Revenue, signups.
Exactly. But what about the crucial stuff, like the technical improvements, the infrastructure work? They often lose out because the benefits feel abstract or maybe they're further down the road. Yeah, nobody gets excited about refactoring until the system actually breaks.
Precisely. And then you're forced into those expensive, painful emergency fixes that, honestly, probably could have been avoided with just some steady investment along the way.
So the article calls the main consequence of this reactive planning, right?
Yeah. If your strategy only exists on a slide somewhere and not in how you actually spend your team's time, then yeah, the loudest voice wins. It could be sales with an escalation.
Or engineering warning about tech debt, or marketing pushing for some competitor feature.
Right. And without clear boundaries for investment, teams just get pulled in all directions. They thrash between priorities and lose sight of, the long-term picture.
Okay, so that makes sense. That traditional way is flawed. So how do the really high-performing teams get around this? What's the alternative?
Well, they often solve it by borrowing an idea straight from finance, actually. Portfolio allocation.
Like investing.
Exactly like investing. Think about it. Investors don't compare, say, super safe government bonds with like a speculative crypto startup using the same yardstick.
Right. Different risk, different potential reward, different purpose.
Exactly. So why should product teams evaluate, say, necessary infrastructure work against a new growth experiment using identical criteria? It doesn't make sense.
Ah, okay. So that's the core concept. It's a fundamental shift. You're saying instead of just ranking everything together.
You allocate your capacity, your team's time and effort across distinct categories of investment first.
Okay, like buckets.
Yeah, buckets, portfolios, whatever you want to call them. And then, only then, do you prioritize the specific items within each of those buckets using criteria that actually make sense for that bucket's purpose.
That immediately starts to solve that apples and oranges problem we were talking about.
Precisely. The article lays out 5 common categories, along with some typical allocation percentages, though obviously these aren't set in stone.
Okay, what are they?
So first up, you've got growth and acquisition. This often gets a big chunk, maybe around 40%. This is all about new features, driving user growth, activation, getting more revenue.
Like referral programs, better sign-up flows, maybe premium features, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Then there's quality experience, maybe around 25%. This is about improving things for your existing users, keeping them happy, keeping them around.
So optimizing for mobile, smoothing out checkout, accessibility improvements.
Spot on. Next is platform and scale, maybe 20%. This is the behind-the-scenes stuff, the infrastructure investments that let you grow and operate efficiently down the line.
Performance tuning, architecture changes, maybe tools to help developers be more productive.
Yep. Then you have technical health, maybe 10%. This is that essential maintenance, reducing complexity, fixing things before they break.
Code refactoring, security updates, maybe even just better documentation, which often gets ignored.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And finally, research and discovery, perhaps a smaller slice, like 5%. This is your lab coat stuff, experiments, learning, validating future ideas.
User research, building prototypes, exploring new markets.
Exactly. That's the space for learning and placing future bets.
Now, it's really important, as you said, that these categories and percentages aren't rigid rules, right?
Absolutely not. They have to vary based on your product. Is it a startup? Is it a mature enterprise product? What's your market position? What are your strategic goals right now?
A startup might pour way more into growth, while a mature product might focus more on platform or quality.
For sure. The critical thing isn't the specific numbers, it's making those allocation decisions explicitly, getting them out in the open, rather than letting them happen by accident or through politics or just putting out fires.
Okay, so why does this approach work so much better? You mentioned solving the apples to oranges thing.
That's the core of it, yeah. When you force yourself to compare, say, a user experience tweak against a database optimization using the same ROI metric, it just breaks down. They provide different kinds of value.
Right.
Portfolio thinking acknowledges that. It creates protected space for each type of work to be judged on its own merits. That refactoring project, it doesn't need to pretend it's going to boost signups by 10%.
Its job is to reduce system complexity or improve developer speed within its own technical health budget.
Exactly. It's evaluated against that goal.
So besides solving that comparison problem, how else does this help teams deal with all the pressures they face? Sales yelling, marketing wanting the next big thing.
It acts as a buffer, really. It provides crucial protection against just reacting to short-term noise and external pressure.
How so?
Well, when that sales leader comes banging on the door about an urgent customer escalation, instead of panicking and potentially derailing everything.
You have a framework.
Right. The portfolio already decided roughly how much capacity is available for that type of work. Maybe it fits within quality or dedicated customer responses sliver. The escalation gets evaluated within that context, not against your entire strategic roadmap for the quarter. It lets you respond strategically, not just reactively.
Let's make this concrete. Walk us through that Series A startup example from the article. They've got a bunch of typical problems, right?
Yeah, it's a classic scenario.
Yeah.
Okay, imagine. Churn is spiking after the first month. European users are complaining load times are terrible. The revenue team wants a new upgrade prompt, like yesterday, to hit their numbers. And the engineers are saying this brittle payment service is causing constant bugs and needs refactoring.
Okay, typical Tuesday.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Now, the traditional approach, shove it all in the backlog, try to rank it.
So churn feels most urgent. It goes top. Load times, fewer users, maybe it drops. Upgrade prompt, promises cash, jumps up. Payment refactor.
Pushed. Again, we'll get to it next quarter, which of course guarantees more bugs, more fire drills.
Okay, so how does portfolio allocation change that picture?
Completely changes the dynamic. Let's say you allocated capacity. Maybe 40% growth, 30% quality, 20% platform, 10% technical health, just as an example.
Yeah.
Now, within those boundaries, growth gets the upgrade prompt. Quality takes on the churn problem, maybe by improving onboarding. Platform tackles the European load times. And crucially,
Technical health gets the payment refactor done.
exactly, that 10% allocation protects that work. Each problem gets attention based on its strategic category, not just who yelled loudest or what felt hottest this week. And you can actually push back on misaligned requests more confidently.
Why? Because the investment decision was already made at the portfolio level.
Precisely. That's a great idea for growth, but our growth allocation is committed this cycle. Let's look at it for next quarter's allocation.
Okay, that sounds much more sane. But here comes the hard part, right? Stakeholder resistance.
Yes. The politics.
Because people who are used to using their influence or just sheer urgency to get things prioritized, they might not love a system that puts boundaries on that.
Definitely not. Sales might argue every customer escalation is critical. Engineering might say tech debt is always worse than you think. Marketing insists they need to react to that competitor now. It's the biggest hurdle.
So how do you manage that? You can't just ignore them.
No, you can't. The key the article suggests is transparency. First, before you even propose the portfolio, maybe document how decisions are actually getting made today.
Show the chaos.
Kind of, yeah. Track how much engineering time is really going into reactive work, emergency fixes, dealing with escalations versus planned strategic work. Show how often the important stuff gets bumped. make the pain visible.
Okay, so you're not just presenting this as some abstract process change, you're framing it as a solution to the problems everyone is already feeling.
Exactly. It's about protecting the work everyone cares about.
Yeah.
Look, sales, your priority customer features, they get dedicated capacity in the growth or quality bucket. Engineering, your platform improvements, guaranteed space in platform or tech health.
So everyone still gets a voice, but it's channeled within these strategic boundaries instead of being a free-for-all.
That's the idea. And the article suggests a smart tactic. Pilot it. Try the portfolio approach for just 1 quarter.
Test it out.
Yeah. Use the results from that pilot to show, hey, look, things were more predictable, we thrashed less, we actually made progress on tech debt and shipped features. Most stakeholders, ultimately, prefer that predictability over constant political battles, even if it means they don't always get their way immediately.
Now, some people hearing this might think, okay, sounds good, but isn't this just a rigid quarterly plan, a straitjacket?
That's a fair concern,
Yeah.
but the article makes it clear it's not meant to be rigid like that. It's a dynamic framework. The key is distinguishing between, like, everyday tactical noise and genuine strategic shifts.
Explain that difference.
Okay, so tactical pressures happen all the time, right? A customer escalates, a competitor launches something minor, you hit a performance snag. These things don't usually warrant throwing the whole portfolio out.
They get handled within the existing allocations.
Exactly. You prioritize them based on the criteria for that specific category. Maybe the customer issue fits in quality, the performance snag in platform.
Yeah.
But strategic shifts, those are different. Like a major security vulnerability is discovered that might force you to temporarily pump up the platform or tech health allocation, maybe borrowing from growth for a bit. Or a huge new market opportunity emerges that might justify shifting more resources into research and discovery.
So how do you decide when to rebalance the portfolio, and should that be transparent?
Absolutely transparent. Rebalancing should happen when something fundamental changes the underlying assumptions of your current allocation. Maybe your customer acquisition costs suddenly skyrocket, suggesting you need to invest more in growth or rethink that strategy.
And you need discipline there too, right? Not just changing it every week.
For sure. Document why you're changing it, what the new allocation is, and maybe when you expect to return to the baseline. Avoid making permanent shifts based on temporary panic.
This brings up the practical side of actually planning capacity and estimating work, which is, let's be honest, always messy.
Oh yeah. Engineering estimates are notoriously tricky. Tech debt always seems to hide more complexity. Growth experiments often need more tweaking than you thought.
So how does this portfolio framework cope with that inherent messiness?
It copes by acknowledging it and
Yeah.
using different planning approaches for different categories, rather than pretending all work can be estimated the same way.
Okay, give me examples.
Well, for growth work, maybe you use time-boxed experiments. Set a clear learning goal. We'll run this A/B test for 2 weeks. If it doesn't show promise, we stop and try something else. No endless tweaking.
Makes sense. What about platform work? That often has those unknown unknowns.
Right. So for platform, you build in buffer time. You focus on incremental progress, maybe breaking large infrastructure projects into smaller deliverable chunks. And for technical health,
Like that refactoring project.
yeah, you need really clear done criteria up front. It's not done when the code is perfect. It's done when, say, specific performance metrics improve or bug rates related to that module decrease measurably.
And the portfolio itself can help improve estimation over time.
Definitely. Use your adherence to the allocation as a feedback loop. If you consistently blow your growth budget, but never seem to use your full platform allocation, well, either your estimates are systematically biased or your actual priorities don't match your stated strategy.
And both of those are problems you need to fix.
Exactly. The allocation forces those conversations.
Okay, but real product work is rarely neat and tidy in categories, right? Things overlap. Growth features often need platform support. Quality work might uncover tech debt. Research might point to infrastructure needs. How does the portfolio handle those dependencies?
That's a great point. The solution the article proposes is explicit dependency planning during the allocation process.
So upfront.
Upfront. When you commit to that big growth initiative and you know it needs back-end work, you don't just allocate capacity from the growth bucket. You also allocate corresponding capacity from the platform bucket.
So both commitments are visible and planned for from the start. Not a surprise halfway through.
Right. It avoids that, oh, by the way, we need the platform team for 3 sprints, surprise later on. And if dependencies pop up during development, you need a clear escalation path. Minor ones might get absorbed, but major unexpected ones might trigger a discussion about reallocation.
I guess this is where things like dedicated platform teams or shared services come in handy in larger orgs.
They can, yeah. But even they need careful capacity planning based on the demands from various product portfolios they support. You still need to track that cross-category work. If growth keeps needing way more platform support than planned, maybe your future platform allocation needs to increase.
Okay, let's talk scale. Does this portfolio idea work differently for a tiny startup versus a huge enterprise?
It works across the board, but yeah, the implementation details change. For a startup, it might be pretty simple, maybe just allocating time within one or two engineering teams. Decisions can be made quickly by a small group.
But a mid-stage company,
There, you might need portfolios at multiple levels, maybe company-level strategic allocations that then guide portfolio decisions within individual product teams or lines.
and then at the enterprise level, it sounds like it becomes a major capacity planning exercise.
It really does. You're allocating across maybe multiple product lines, different platforms, central engineering groups. The focus shifts heavily towards ensuring those big strategic bets get the resources they need across the whole organization, preventing silos from starving important initiatives.
And the portfolio mix itself would change based on product maturity too, right?
Absolutely. A product hitting maturity might dial down the growth allocation and ramp up quality or technical health to ensure stability and retention, whereas a new product is likely all about growth and discovery.
So when you really boil it down, what does this framework tell us about what product strategy really is?
It hammers home that core idea. Strategy isn't just the plan you write down. It's not the slide deck. Strategy lives in where you actually put your resources.
Your time, your money, your people's effort.
Exactly. Your capacity allocation is your strategy, made real. If you say customer experience is top priority, but you only allocate, say, 5% of engineering time to quality improvements, well, your actual strategy is prioritizing something else.
If you talk about technical excellence, but keep deferring infrastructure work.
Your actual strategy is optimizing for short-term feature delivery, possibly at the expense of long-term health and speed. A good portfolio forces you to align what you say your strategy is with where you invest your team's energy.
Which leads naturally to measuring success. If you adopt this, you can't just keep tracking velocity or story points shipped in the same way, can you?
No, definitely not. The focus shifts. You start tracking allocation adherence. Did we actually spend our time roughly according to the portfolio plan? And, more importantly, outcome achievement within categories.
So you need different metrics for different buckets.
Pretty much. Your monthly or quarterly reviews should look at, did we spend roughly 20% on platform? If we only spent 5%, why? Was the allocation wrong, or did other things just take over? Both need addressing.
And then for the outcomes.
Right. For growth investments, you're looking for impact on acquisition, activation, revenue. For quality, maybe it's user satisfaction scores, retention rates, task success rates. For platform, reliability metrics, performance improvements, maybe deployment frequency.
And technical health. Reduced bug counts, lower code complexity, faster build times.
Exactly. Measuring the right outcomes for each category shows if your portfolio is actually delivering the different kinds of value you intended and whether your allocation mix makes sense.
This really reframes the product manager's role, doesn't it?
Fundamentally, it highlights that product management at its core is about resource allocation under uncertainty. Maybe your most critical decisions aren't about the specifics of feature X versus feature Y.
They're about where to invest that scarce resource, your team's time and focus, to create the most long-term value.
Precisely. Stack ranking optimizes for lots of small, local decisions, but it often misses the big strategic picture. Portfolio allocation forces you to think about the overall strategic coherence, the balance across different types of necessary work.
So it ensures your team's energy is actually flowing towards what truly matters for the long haul, not just whatever feels urgent today.
Yeah. And that might mean moving slower on some things people are asking for in order to move faster and more deliberately on what really counts strategically. It might mean saying no or not now more often, even to important stakeholders.
To deliver better overall outcomes for users and the business in the end, fewer reactive decisions, more strategic ones.
It won't make prioritization easy. It's always hard. But it aims to make the conversations more productive, grounding them in that strategic allocation framework instead of just descending into political tug-of-war. That's really the leap from just managing a backlog to truly leading a product's direction.
So wrapping up, we've journeyed from that familiar chaos of trying to stack rank everything to this much more disciplined, strategic approach of managing your product like an investment portfolio.
Yeah, it's a significant shift, moving from constantly reacting to actually leading with intent.
It really is. So, here's something for you, our listeners, to think about. If strategy truly lives in how you allocate your resources, take an honest look. What is your team's current capacity allocation where the time and energy really go say about your actual priorities right now?